welcome everybody to another edition of the Black Agenda Podcast Live. As always, I'm your co-host Devin Dito, and I'm joined by my co-host Adrian Guest, and we are happy to be back for another weekly roundup. This time, weekly roundup number 5, and as always, we have a lot of different news to get to. And so, Adrian, what are you kind of looking forward to this show? Absolutely. I think if you're looking for news that is, we try to be unbiased. Obviously we are for certain things, but we try to give you the facts first and then give you. Right, exactly. We are definitely for that. But we'll give you the facts first and then give you, our opinions later. And so, yeah, so that's how we do it here at the Black Agenda. And so we want to start in Georgia. So let's go to Georgia. And in particular, we want to talk about the reaction to this past election. This past election saw record turnout across all levels, Democrats, Republicans. I think, it ended up Joe Biden getting 80 plus million votes, which is a record. Donald Trump also got a record number of votes for someone who lost an election. So obviously people were involved. And so in Georgia, though, we did see the special election. African Americans in the suburbs and in the cities turned out, along with a lot of other, liberals and white people. Everybody came out in Georgia, as far as the Democratic side, and came out to push, the Senate over to Democratic control. And of course, just like what we saw, a few years ago when President Obama got elected, there's a backlash to that. And so this is, our first story here. This is according to the Georgia Public Broadcasting. Republicans in the Georgia House have released an omnibus bill that proposes tougher restrictions on both absentee and in-person voting. And so this is House Bill 531, filed by Representative Barry Fleming, who is a Republican. And he introduced this bill into a special committee on Thursday. And so just to give you a quick overview, this bill it would require Georgia counties to hold early voting from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. and then only Monday through Friday, and that would be for 3 weeks before the election. And so there would also be a mandatory 9 to 5 period of voting the second Saturday before the election. This would also allow counties to extend hours to 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., but would prohibit counties from holding early voting on any other days. And this includes Sunday. This is a big thing. Adrian, a lot of folks vote on Sunday. They call it souls to the polls. If you're going to church, you can also go vote early in the same day. And so this bill is has a direct target at those types of voting events and things that pushed the record turnout in Georgia. So, Adrian, we didn't want to call it a backlash or white lash, but it kind of looks like that with this kind of bill coming in, so obviously going at things that worked for Democrats in the past election, trying to reverse some of that to get ready for 2022 and onward.
viewers is restrict these secure drop boxes. We have seen that the use of these drop boxes. We've seen that in 2020 when we couldn't do a lot of gathering, we had to do social distancing. These drop boxes were huge in making sure that everyone could vote and vote safely. So it's just kind of crazy to me that they're trying to restrict these, but it just further illustrates that narrative that you have certain people, the Republicans, who are really trying to get people to stop voting. I even was watching MSNBC, Devin, because I try to chime into the news every once in a while, even though we report. And one of the things I saw from Ali Velshi, he was standing in for Rachel Maddow. He had a Georgia congresswoman on. I wish I remembered her name, but she pointed out one of the really weird parts of the bill that says you can't even give voters who've been standing in a long line, you can't give them food and drink. I mean, they're trying to make that a crime, and that's just it's another thing that just doesn't make any sense. If you're going to want a democracy, democracy includes everybody, Devin.
Exactly. And you would think that after a record turnout election equaled Republicans almost taking the House and almost retaining control of the Senate, you would think that they would be open to the idea of welcoming more people into the voting process, because usually it used to be conventional wisdom was when it was a record or high turnout, the Democrats were going to do better because they're probably activating people who hadn't voted, in a long time, or they were registering new voters. But 2020 kind of turned it on its head. Donald Trump was able to get record turnout among Republicans. Now, he didn't win the election, but they did very well down ballot. So it's like I get it, but it's also like you would think that they would get out of this archaic just thinking that we have to stop people of color, black, white, black, Latino, and Hispanics, and everybody from getting to the polls in high numbers, because it doesn't bode well for Republicans. And we're not just making this up. This happened after President Obama. When he was elected, there was a whole slew of voter ID laws that went into effect after he was, elected in 2008. And so this is not new. We've seen this type of, you could call it white lash, backlash. But look, Mitch McConnell made it very clear he wanted to make Barack Obama a one-term president. And so they spent the next 4 years from 2008 to 2012 trying to make sure that was the case. And so even one Republican strategist even said it during the interview. He said, a lot of us are campaign officials or campaign professionals. We want to do everything we can to help our side. Sometimes we think that's voter ID. Sometimes we think that's longer lines, whatever it may be. So it's very obvious that the thinking behind these voter ID laws is that this will deter some folks from being able to vote. And look, too, there's just not very much evidence that there is widespread voter fraud. So that's another thing. They're trying to fix a problem that doesn't really exist. And so Adrian, we've heard since Joe Biden got into the White House, Republicans try to criticize him for not being unifying and doesn't want to negotiate with Senate Republicans about the stimulus bill. And, he's trying to undo what Trump did. And so people are like, he's not being unifying. But here we are, with Georgia Republicans trying to go back to the same old of dividing and trying to stop people from voting. I just don't know what it will take for people to understand that they don't have to be afraid of people participating in the voting process. That's what the country was built on.
You would think, Devin, but as history shows us, when minorities, like us, try to stand up, legislation's got to change. Something's got to give to slow that progress down. I mean, whether it's black codes or separate but equal, the Jim Crow, the redlining, there's always been something in place to kind of slow that sort of advancement of the black and brown community. So it's by no surprise that this is happening. This is just, viewers, you shouldn't be shocked by what you see happening in Georgia. I mean, this is what we saw with the Tea Party movement. This is what we saw with the birtherism movement in regard to President Barack Obama. So not new, just something that we got to stop. So if you live in Georgia, put some pressure on those lawmakers. If you don't live in Georgia, you can still put some pressure. A lot of different ways to do that. And that kind of leads us into our next little story where we've got a little video clip to share with you before we get into it. So, Devin, I'll let you introduce that.
Yeah, so this is a story out of Arizona, and so you see the lower third right there, lack of empathy, and so this was a video out of Arizona where there was a gentleman who, for some reason, I don't know if he was having a bad day or he just felt like he wanted to make someone else's day that much worse, but he decided to drive by a food line and decided to harass the people that were in line trying to get help, and so. We're gonna show you. Yeah, we're gonna show you a quick clip here to kind of get an idea of what he had to say. Let's find that here. Where's he at? Okay.
A father who
And
was
we're
in
gonna scroll through this a little bit to get to the what he.
In this pandemic, people lining up for food is unfortunately a but tonight, tempers flared when a Buckeye family says a man suddenly drove up.
Get a job! Then why are you waiting in line for free food?
Now, I spoke to one couple
you're here
who was in the car with their four
video,
young children
Adrian, the
when
man
this
says,
all went down.
Get an effing job. Why are you in line to get free food? And it's just like, what? I don't understand where this outburst came from. The man here that you saw in the video there speaking, his name is Ryan Bryson. It's 46 years old, out of Arizona, like I say, Maricopa County. And so this happened on Thursday, but he's actually been arrested since this happened. Maricopa County Sheriff's deputies were called to the food distribution center at Buckeye High School. And they said he was out there yelling obscenities and degrading remarks to members of the community who were at the school for food distribution. And so they spoke to the family and they were obviously, upset and just kind of embarrassed. I mean, I don't understand what he was getting out of this, Adrian. It just didn't, that's just not, the spirit that we would expect from a country that's been through, a hellacious pandemic, lost over 500,000 people, millions of jobs are gone. And here he is, of all things, he's in his work truck doing this. So he just told the whole world that High Side Electric in Arizona is being run by a man who doesn't think people really need help out here.
And and it's so crazy that whenever confronted by people about what he said, I mean he says he stands his ground. He stands firm on what he says. Those people need to go back to work. They should feel ashamed of themselves. It's crazy to me because this guy's a business owner. You think that he's got a little bit of grit and grind. He's been there, done that, so he should maybe understand that that things don't always happen easily. Because I mean, sometimes business is good, sometimes business isn't. But this guy just really shows the disconnect that we have in America when we look at a population that really can't fully comprehend hardship. Really can't fully comprehend people who are struggling at really no fault of their own. I mean, you got to remember, viewers, this is a global pandemic we're going through. I mean, our experts say we see this maybe once every 100 years. I mean, no one's really been alive to see the last one. When you think about the fact that in this pandemic, people lost their jobs, Devin, you talked about losing your job, and to my knowledge, based on me knowing you and your work ethic, I know it had nothing to do with your work ethic. Had nothing to do with you being lazy. Had nothing to do with you not wanting to go to work. Had nothing to do with you just wanting to sit on the couch and get a handout. It just was the fact that industry declined. The economy tanked. I mean, that's all that was. It wasn't Ryan yelling at these people. He's yelling at them for something that they didn't even control. And Devin, I was looking at some different numbers here to kind of paint a picture for people, because a lot of people think people are lazy and just want to get unemployment. But if you look at like unemployment benefits, if you get $300 to $400 a week plus maybe an extra $300 to $400 from the federal government, you're only looking at like $600 to $800 a week, or about $2,400 to $3,200 a month. So let's just say you're getting $3,000 a month. Devin, the average mortgage payment is like $1,300 in America. Average rent like $1,500. So there goes half of your money just in rent. And if you aren't getting food stamps, you're only getting about 125 a month. If you've got a family of maybe one, two, three, or four, these people aren't trying to wait in food lines and trying to file for unemployment just to cheat the system. They're just really trying to get by, Devin.
Yes, I mean, like, listen, this whole myth that people are out here living the life on unemployment benefits is a lie. I mean, like, yeah, they're probably at home, but they're not just, out here, driving Mercedes and things. Like,
they're waiting in food lines.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of people, even before the pandemic, a lot of working people were still having to get food, food stamps and some kind of government support because they didn't make enough to fill the gaps. And so, and here is the point that really lets you know this guy is on a high horse he really shouldn't be on, and a little bit of a hypocrite because his company, Highside Electric, actually got a paycheck protection program loan from the government. Now, I don't know if they've paid it back, but he got an $86,000 loan for his company. Now, Mr., you should get a job and stop giving, going out to get free food. You should have turned down that PPP loan. You should have gotten out there and hit the pavement and rounded up funding for your business. You don't need a handout from the government, apparently. But apparently, they can't get free food, but you can get a PPP loan, so that's like, it's like we live in different worlds, and I don't know where this self-righteous, I'm better than people who get government support, came from. I think we really need to take a step back and understand, like, kind of like what you painted there. This pandemic and what's happening is the fault of no one. That it's the fault of the federal government for having a terrible response to it. But the fact that all these people are losing their jobs is no fault of their own. They're not in the food line because they wanted to be there. Like, they didn't really have a choice, obviously, because they didn't want to, be starving. And then you have people like him to come out and try to embarrass them like that, which is pretty disgusting. And our last, example of just a lack of empathy that is out there. We had a Texas mayor. His name is Tim Boyd. He was the mayor of Colorado City. And so we know Texas this week went through the winter storm of the ages, like the worst winter storm we've had in a long time. Record low temperatures. Here in Dallas, it got 2 degrees below zero, which is the coldest weather I've ever been in and seen. And it was insane. But apparently, for this mayor of a West Texas town, that that storm there, I guess it wasn't so bad for him, or he thought people were complaining too much, because he went on Facebook and wrote that people suffering in the cold without power should not look to their local government for help. Now, he is the mayor of the city. He's writing this. He went on a post on Tuesday morning. Tuesday morning was the coldest morning of all the days last week. Tuesday morning was the coldest morning. He goes on and writes that no one owes you anything, owes your family anything, nor is it the local government's responsibility to support you during times like this. The city and county, along with power providers or any other service, owes you nothing. And that's nothing in all caps, people. So he was letting you know he could care less that your family was cold. And here's a picture of his post there. And again, he didn't back down from these comments. He said he meant everything that he said. I think he was sorry for the way he said it, but he did not back down for what he said.
Devin, whenever you have people like this in office, it just makes you question, like, how did they get there? Like, you know that this guy had these same sort of thoughts before. Before he took office. I mean, he's got these thoughts. I mean, I don't know his record, but I guarantee you could look at his record and see a lot of inaction and inability to want to progress, his constituents. I mean, he says that he's sick and tired of people looking for handouts. And no one's looking for a handout. Wow. People just want power. I mean, people just want heat. People just want you to just say, hey, constituent, I'm looking after you. Like, I care about you, not, only the strong will survive and the weak will perish. I mean, what kind of...
That's a direct quote, people. That's a direct
Yeah, that's a
quote.
direct quote, viewers. So, what kind of language is that? I mean, you've got people that are at power. You've got, a report from the electric delivery, which serves about 4,400 customers in Colorado City zip code, that showed about 1,300 of them were without power. And the temperature was 23 degrees. I mean, I'm in LA and, it's about 40, 50. But I know when it's 23 degrees and you don't have power, it's cold. I
Yes.
mean, it's really, really bad. And viewers, the main little theme out of this is that, government is supposed to be of the people, by the people, for the people. Whether you look at this Texas story, whether you look at, back what we were talking about in Georgia, we need to really have a tightness within our society to understand that we're all together. I mean, whether you're a leader or whether you're just a regular constituent, we're all together. And a lot of the things that are going on that we've been talking about is just because our government has really failed to create a safety net for the people. You've got a lot of people who are on hard times, Devin. And if we would have had an appropriate safety net, I mean, you wouldn't have, people like this Texas mayor having to yell at people for being lazy or no good or whatever. You would have people like Ryan having to yell at, people in food banks and food lines, because of that safety net. You wouldn't have to do that. So, that's one, thing we wanted to make sure that you kind of take away, viewers, and whenever you see this, is that it's no fault of those people. It's really a fault of failed leadership.
Absolutely. Failed leadership at all levels. I'm in Texas, so we were thankfully lucky to not lose power, but I could not have imagined waking up Tuesday morning and the temperature is 2 below and I don't have power. And now a lot of people don't have water. I mean, those are basic necessities. We're not asking for, like $1,400 checks every month and, extra items and more food stamps. They're asking for power and water. Basic necessities for human life on Earth. Like, they're not asking for like these astronomical things. And so I don't know where this, like I say, this tough guy mentality, that this, like the tough dad, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. There's a time and place for that. The time and place is not once in 100-year winter storm for you to go tough guy mode on the 4,400 people who live in your city. You're the mayor of the city. Like, wrong place, wrong time for that. Same thing in Arizona. Like,
and speaking of tough guy, not to steal any thunder you may have had, but I feel like President Joe Biden got that tough guy memo as well, because we're here to report, viewers, that President Biden is kind of raining on our parade. If you're a borrower that's got some student loan debt, he's putting on that tough guy, Devin. He's committed that he is not upping that $10,000 to $50,000, which, fortunately I don't have that much, but hey, I would have loved to have had as many as I do have. So I do have a little over that 10,000. But viewers, we want to let you know, in the town hall with CNN, President Biden did confirm that he's not going to go up like a lot of Democratic senators want him to do. But he did reaffirm that he would like to make sure that community colleges as well as state universities for families that make under $125,000, they do want that to be free. So at least there's that, Devin.
Yeah, it's something, I guess. It's not what we want, but it's something. So I'm not going to complain too much. So we'll leave it there. So that's it for our first segment. When we come back after the break, we're going to talk about the Texas winter storm that we've kind of mentioned. We'll talk about Ted Cruz fleeing to Mexico, and then give you a little update on COVID. So stay with us, and we'll be right back. All right, welcome back. So we're going to get into the biggest story from this past week, which is the massive winter storm that hit most of the country, but really crippled Texas, including the power grid in Texas. And so we just wanted to kind of give you a kind of an explanation of exactly what went down here in Texas. And so for those of you who don't know, Texas does have an isolated power grid from the rest of the country, and that grid is governed by an organization called the Electric Reliability Council of Texas, and it monitors the entire grid from the state. It doesn't necessarily produce the electricity that goes to your home, but it does dictate, when it's time to do these rolling blackouts, and it does sort of overlook the production companies as far as things that they need to do. And so this past week, like I say, Texas experienced some of the coldest temperatures they've had in hundreds of years, and it crippled the system. I mean, that's pretty straightforward. I mean, you had natural gas lines that were freezing, you had water pipes to power generators that were freezing, and so they just did not have enough electricity for everyone, and so they had to knock people off the grid to save the grid itself from being overloaded with demand. And so when it was just it really was a perfect storm. And so the ERCO officials said that some of the generators did implement new winter practices because this very same thing happened in 2011, and these new practices were voluntary, so they were not required. And so obviously, Adrian, we live in a capitalistic society. When you make things like regulations like winterizing equipment voluntary, it's likely some companies are not going to spend the money to winterize their equipment. And that's what happened in this situation. They were not prepared, even though this exact same thing happened in 2011. And so, one of the things, just to give you an idea of what happened too, as far as the total capacity that was missing, about 40% of the power, the installed capacity to the grid, about 40% of that went offline. So they were running about 60%. And then at the height of the storm, about 4.5 million people were without power in Texas during the coldest weather they've had in, decades. And so this was a awful situation. And two, interesting stat here, about 60%, at one point, 60% of the city of Houston was without power. I mean, that's over half the city is crippled. And so, Adrian, this was an awful, situation. And so, a lot of people were talking about trying to blame, renewable energy. You had Greg Abbott go on Fox News and Hannity trying to say that we're going to blame the Green New Deal somehow for them not having power generation. I don't know how that happened, but that is not the truth. It was not the main fault of the wind and solar energy. But Adrian, you can see Republicans are not going to let a good crisis go to waste and try to shoot some daggers at AOC and the Green New Deal.
Yeah, I don't understand the tie there. It's like when you look at the facts, natural gas, nuclear, coal power plants, all those sorts of things. They're the ones that really produce a lot of the state's energy, and they also struggle. I think it's just a way for politicians to do what politicians do, and when something goes wrong, they figure out who else they can blame aside from just taking responsibility. But speaking of responsibility, one good thing that we can see out of this story, viewers, is people like Beyonce who are coming in to partner up with other nonprofits and try to get something done. It's stories like this where I'm just like, yeah, all the other crap is real bad, but at least we can have an uh-oh moment from somebody, and hopefully, we can have more people. Which I know she's a Texas native, from Texas, Houston, Texas, actually. So whether you're from Texas or not, it doesn't matter. We need more people to be standing up like her and really trying to do things. So her foundation, the Bake Good Foundation, and Adidas are actually teaming up with Houston's Bread of Life to bring urgent relief to residents who have been affected by the deadly winter storm. So we're a real nice, heart, warming thing that's going on. I always know that, when we have natural disasters, we see, FEMA and things like that going out and trying to help. We see more celebrities trying to bring awareness and attention to the cause. So I hope that, Devin, that this is just the first of many celebrities who will come out and try to do stuff, because everybody is struggling right now. And they did have a application process for disaster relief and financial assistance. We've provided the link for you there. First round looks like it's over with for submissions. However, just in case it's going to reopen, we just want to make sure you have it. So if you are in need of assistance, make sure you keep this link here. Look out for this program just in case it reopens. Devin, with every good thing, there's always a counter to it. There's always somebody that's got to act up, and that somebody just happens to be a senator. And I think that his actions have earned him a new nickname, Cancun Cruz. I think that'll probably be one of his things that he'll remember for 2021. Cancun Cruz. This reminds me of Moscow Mitch. I guess he maybe got he needed a nickname too. But viewers, everybody's seen the pictures. Everybody's seen the post of Cruz waiting in the airport with the suitcase, getting ready to fly off to Mexico, and Devin, it's not funny, I guess, because it's serious stuff, because he shouldn't have done this, because he's got constituents who are suffering. But it's just crazy that you've got somebody that's totally just withdrawn from what's going on. I mean, he's a Texan. I mean, he's
yes.
born and raised, lives and breathes Texas, but he chooses to leave at one of the moments when y'all need him most. That doesn't make sense.
He needs to fire whoever is his publicist or communications manager, whoever said you need to run off to Mexico in the middle of the worst winter storm in decades. They need to be fired for that advice. Look, I mean, say what you want. He couldn't have been, helpful. What did you expect? I mean, there are people out there, the Ben Shapiro's of the world, who are trying to defend what Ted Cruz did, trying to say, well, nobody expects Ted Cruz to come back from Mexico and put the power grid back together and make it work. Like, he's not Bob the Builder. Like, we just want him to come back and be there with the people who he supposedly represents in Congress. I mean, the optics are awful. That alone is enough to stay at home. Yes, he didn't have power. His family did not have power, but so did 4 million other people in Texas. I mean, I wish I could run off. Yeah.
That's like, Devin, what if he were, if you got people who are homeless and he's just doing, video shoots every day of him, eating, great meals. It's like, yeah, we don't expect for him to feed the entire state, but it just looks bad.
It just looks bad. And it looks like you say you're just kind of, disconnected from what's happening in your own state. When you have people like Beto O'Rourke and people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez who are out there trying to help. Don't live, Beto, but AOC does not live here, and she's raised upwards of $2 million for her, for Texas relief. Beto is out there, has a phone bank calling senior citizens in Texas for wellness calls to make sure that they're okay. Look, Ted Cruz doesn't have to do a whole lot. The bar is really low. I mean, he could have gotten out there and handed out water to people. He could have just walked around the neighborhoods to check in on people. You could have done a lot of other things than go to Cancun. Like, you could, if
that was your first thought of how to help people, then you're clearly missing the mark.
Yes, he was. And then he came out with the statement saying, at first saying he was going to just drop off his daughters and he was planning on coming back. Then he had to kind of tweak that a little bit and say, well, I didn't actually plan on coming right back, but I did, So, I mean, look, let's be honest. Ted was going to Cancun and he was not coming back. I think they actually found out from the airline he was not scheduled to come back until Saturday. And so I get it. I totally understand it, but you are the U.S. Senator for the state of Texas. Texas is going through a massive crisis and you're flying to Cancun. It just doesn't look, it looks like you don't give a, what about the people in Texas. Whether that's true or not, that's how it looks. And you can't tell me if this was Ocasio-Cortez leaving New York in the middle of a snowstorm, blizzard, whatever, that they would not be ripping her up right now on Fox News. Like, this is what we expect from our representatives to be there when things happen. Everybody remembers Condoleezza Rice buying shoes when Hurricane Katrina was hitting New Orleans. It just doesn't look good. So, awful optics. But we'll let Ted live a little bit there, and so we'll move on to get back to get to why this whole thing happened in the first place. Some people are, trying to pin some of the blame on climate change and extreme weather conditions. And so this came from the White House here. White House Homeland Security Advisor Liz Sherwood Randall. She said that the weather conditions that we saw in Texas, where it caused widespread outages, should serve as a reminder that climate change is real. And the country is just not prepared to deal with its impacts. And so actually what's interesting, Adrian, is that meteorologists had actually kind of seen this coming before the public really took notice. And so meteorologists saw this coming in advance, and that's because they saw an extreme weather pattern that was initiated by a large and recognizable phenomenon which unfolded in the Arctic at the beginning of the year, which is called a sudden stratospheric warming. Is SSW the shorthand for that. We're not here to get into the super details. We're not meteorologists, but we did want to tell you what happened. And so here's a little video here to kind of explain what it was actually going on at the North Pole here to cause this sort of extreme weather in Texas. And so what actually happened was you had the North Pole was warming pretty rapidly. And let me go back here. So over the course of a few days in late December and early January, temperatures in the atmosphere high above the North Pole warmed by like 100 degrees, jumping from minus 110 degrees to minus 10. And so these sudden stratospheric warmings are actually a natural occurrence, which happen every couple of winters. And they are kind of the precursor for extreme weather in the following weeks, which is what we just saw in Texas. And so when the Arctic warms rapidly, it disrupts the spinning mass of cold air, which is called the polar vortex there that you see in the video. And that semi-permanent weather system, which is present this winter. So the polar vortex is what actually came down into the heart of the country and gave Texas its coldest weather that we've seen in a very long time. And so, actually, a lot of people say climate change. Some people say they don't believe in climate change. And the other thing, too, is that this is happening during the winter and not the summer. Usually with climate change, you think of warming and setting high temperature records, but this is kind of the opposite. But there is some things there to back it up, that the weather is becoming more extreme.
I mean, I feel like, we go over this so much around hurricane season, Devin, how we talk about the fact that because climate change is real, it's not a hoax. I know, for the past 4 years, we've heard a lot of fake news about that, but it's real. And we always talk about this around hurricane season and say hurricanes are getting worse because of climate change, rising sea levels. I mean, we see here this just winter weather. It's going to get worse because until we have sort of protocols that we can, mitigate some of this stuff that causes climate change, we're going to continue to see that. Well, I mean, the only good thing that we can see happening, with the U.S. and climate change is that we did get back into the Paris Agreement. I think that's going to be something that will help to kind of deal with climate change, because we as a global leader, we've got to be on the forefront of this cause right here. So I'm hopeful that we'll be able to do something. And it really matters, Devin, whenever you think about this in terms of how it's impacting vaccine distribution. I think, Devin, that's what's been on everyone's minds right now, because states can't get the needed vaccines that they need right now because of the weather. I mean, I've ordered a couple of things that can't come here because of the weather right now, and I don't live in Texas. So you can just imagine what's going on with being able to get vaccines out. You have White House officials on Friday confirm that the extent of the weather is really having an effect, a chilling effect, actually. I guess you could, use some puns there on the COVID-19 vaccine distribution, saying this week's storm created a backlog of some 6 million doses affecting all 50 states. And, when talking about how we're going to, revitalize our economy and get people off of, unemployment and out of food banks and things like that, this is what it really comes down to, being able to get these vaccines out here. I don't know what's going to happen, Devin, unless we can have some better coordination. Fortunately, President Biden does have an actual person who's heading up this response team, Andy Slavin, senior advisor of the White House COVID-19 response team. He added that many states have been able to cover some of the delay with existing inventory, and that the Biden administration expects to make up for the backlog shortly. Also adding that about 1.4 million doses are in transit as of yesterday, and that most of the backlog doses are expected to be delivered within the next several days. So hopeful, Devin, that even with all this bad winter weather, even with all the backlogs, we can get back on track, because the administration said, 100 to 150 million vaccines within the first 100 days, 300 million out, by the summer. So if we're going to really get these things, out here, we need to see some progress, because these COVID numbers, Devin, they're still here. They are still real. There are some that are going down, but the one that we really need to be looking at is that death count, and it is continuing to climb, Devin.
Yeah, COVID is still here with us. As always, I say it, still continue to do the things you don't like to do, which is wear your mask and social distance and washing your hands and those things. Still continue to do that. But a quick update here on the numbers. So today, this is according to the COVID Tracking Project, states reported about 1.3, almost 1.3 tests completed today, and then we had 72,000 new cases of the coronavirus, with about 58,000 people currently hospitalized, which is way down from where it was, say, a month ago. And then deaths continue to be about, we had 2,074 deaths today, and so today's COVID case count is the lowest on a Saturday since October 17th, so that is definitely good news. Hospitalizations continue to drop, and today's hospitalization number is the lowest that we've seen since November 8th. And so total, the U.S. has reported about 28 million cases, and unfortunately, we have crossed the threshold of having over 500,000 people who have passed away due to COVID-19. And so this has actually had an effect on the life expectancy of people here in the country. And so a new report came out on Thursday that actually showed, this is from the CDC, that showed that during the first half of 2020, as the pandemic was really taking off, from January to June, the life expectancy for the country was 77.8 years, was down from 78.8 years in 2019. So a full year went off the life expectancy of the entire country. That 77.8 years is the lowest life expectancy since 2006. And so the decline in life expectancy was seen across all groups, racial groups, and it was the most severe. As always, we say this, minorities tend to take the brunt of any type of pandemic or crisis. And so the most severe numbers we saw with Black Americans, who saw almost 3 years come off our life expectancy. It went from 74.7 years to 72 years. Hispanics lost almost 2 years. They went from 81.8 to 79.9. And then white Americans lost less than a year, from 78.8 to 78. And so, Adrian, for all those people out there who thought this whole thing was a hoax, obviously it's very real if it's affecting and impacting the life expectancy of the people who live in the country. I mean, if this is a hoax and these deaths aren't real, you would not be seeing a life expectancy dropping the way it is.
Exactly, Devin, because, people aren't realizing that, yeah, you may get COVID, and be healthy and get over it real quickly, but we don't know all of the after effects and things that are going to happen. And that's why I believe you probably are seeing, a decline, on average of life expectancy, because a lot of people are, going on to have other complications where, yeah, you may have healed up quickly from COVID, but now, you've got some sort of lung issue or something like that. So it's definitely going to be interesting as far as the research that in the next 5 to 10 years to see the effects of COVID-19 outside of just going through the symptoms of the virus. One thing I guess to viewers just to kind of end with before we go into our break, just to help expand healthcare coverage for Americans, because obviously everyone kind of needs that right now. The healthcare marketplace is reopened for a special open enrollment period through May 15th. So if you don't have it yet, go get some health insurance. Look at the marketplace. Go to healthcare.gov to sign up for coverage. Hopefully, you can find some good options there for you. I work in insurance. I know that sometimes it's expensive and cumbersome, but you need it. So make sure you get some of that. So with that being said, viewers, we're going to give you another break here. And when we be back, we're going to come back with some stimulus and some job report numbers. All right, viewers, welcome back. We're going to get into this third segment here, talking about some numbers. We haven't really done an economic report, Devin, in a while, so we figured that it's probably time because it's been a little bit of time since we've done our last one, and we've got some good news, bad news. I guess you could look at it. Some of the good news, viewers, is that the unemployment rate it did fall. Right now, it's sitting at about 6.3%. When you look at it in a little bit, I guess more detail, if you look at the labor participation rate, it also went down. It went down to 61.4%. And that's because about 400,000 workers dropped out of the labor force. And the reason why we're throwing that out is just because, everyone's going to capitalize, and what we mean by everyone, politicians. Again, we're Democrats and we endorse President Biden, but they're going to capitalize on this to say the unemployment rate, that's what you should be focused on. We're doing a really, really great job. But this other thing, labor participation, you got 400,000 people who fell out of the labor force. So they're no longer looking for jobs. They've just given up. I mean, that's a huge deal because that's something that really doesn't get talked about. So that's why we wanted to make sure to kind of bring attention to that, viewers, just to, educate you a little bit more. The other part is that the number of unemployed people right now is about 10 million. Which is about 300,000 less than in December. So we are seeing some better numbers with that, just like COVID. Some numbers are going down while others are going up, but at least we do have that. When you look at it further, Devin, some of the industries that have been hit hardest, obviously it's going to be the hospitality industry and then a little bit of retail. Going to the hospitality, you think about theme parks, restaurants, the airline, every hotels. I mean, no one's going out and doing the things that they used to do. And, part of that's because governments are saying that you can't do that. So, there's that too. But, Devin, I don't know if it's enough struggle for people like Joe Manchin to maybe sign off on some of the stimulus relief after seeing maybe he's going to look at the unemployment rate falling and see that maybe we don't need some extra help because of that. But I think if he would pay more attention to this 400,000 who dropped out of the labor force and some of these food lines, maybe that would tell a different story for him.
Yeah, I mean, it's obvious there is still a need out there, and we're still seeing, close to a million new applications for unemployment insurance, which is an indicator that a lot of people are still losing their jobs. You said it there, 406,000 people who just dropped out of the labor force. I mean, that's massive. So there are still some problems. Things are better, but there's still a very, very long way to go to getting back to, I think it was 12 million jobs that we lost, due to this pandemic. It might even be more than that. I could be off with that. So definitely a murky economic picture, not really clear as far as where we're at currently. And so our next story here is, you've probably heard a little bit about it, and that thing is Bitcoin. And so Bitcoin is skyrocketing as we speak. And right now, it's been in the news all over. And right now, it's about a price of about 57,000. It's going up or down a little bit below that. And so it's 57,000 a coin. And many experts say they see it excelling to over 6 figures a coin. We could be looking at $100,000 Bitcoins, here in the next few months or years. And so we felt the need to bring some attention to this, for our community, because many people, have a lot of questions about how they can capitalize on it. And so here's the graphic here to kind of see, Bitcoin is high, but be very careful. Again, these things they can be risky. And, Adrian, you could kind of tell the folks whether this is the best investment to be jumping on right now.
Yeah, I always tell anybody, I guess as a professional, I should always disclose, because I do sell securities with my job. This isn't any sort of financial advice, but to give you a little bit of education into it, I tell anybody, if you look at the past 5 years of Bitcoin, you can only see an upward trend. I mean, it's gone up. I mean, yeah, it's gone, it's been kind of spotty, but I've been kicking myself, a little bit, Devin, because I started my first, official job in 2016. And this was, 5 years ago, when Bitcoin was maybe 1,000 or so a coin. And I just thought to myself, what if I had been putting, obviously I couldn't put 1,000 a month, but maybe I could have, because I lived in a place that was really inexpensive compared to here. But what if I would have started taking advantage of putting in that, and 5 years later, it's selling at 57,000 a coin. That viewers is the reason why we're talking about this. Whenever you hear cryptocurrency and Bitcoin and all the other ones that are on the cryptocurrency market, it does sound a little sketchy. Me, whenever I worked as a financial professional, selling like mutual funds, doing retirement, stuff like that. Whenever I heard of cryptocurrency, I was telling my friends, like, why would I do that? It's not tied to anything. It's not backed by gold or backed by, any sort of collateral. It's just, just in the air. It's just something that's in the cloud. But, you got to remember, viewers, supply and demand. That's what really drives the economy. And there's been a lot of demand for this. So that's what we're really just trying to press people. Like I said, not to give you advice on what to do, but to tell you might want to pay a little bit of attention to this. You may want to start, chucking a few bucks here and there, because one of the things about being able to invest in Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies is the fact that it's really easy to do. I mean, there's a number of different platforms, from Robinhood. I'm sure you can do E-Trade, or you can Google. There's a number of different things. I use Robinhood. That's the easiest thing for not having to pay commissions when you do trades. But really, really easy to do. A lot of different elements to it other than just Bitcoin. I think there's about, I don't know, Devin, like 6 to 7 different sectors or different assets, I guess you could say, that are within the cryptocurrency market. So yeah, Bitcoin may be $57,000 a coin. You may think, how would I ever be able to afford money to put in that? but you don't have to focus all on Bitcoin. You can focus on some of the others, and you can also buy fractional shares within that Bitcoin. I own like 0.006% of a share or whatever, just because I don't have 57,000 to be putting in something. But that's essentially why we wanted to talk about this, viewers. People in our community, whether you're black or brown or whatever, you really need to take advantage of looking into investments. You really need to do that. Because people who are living the dream, living the 1%, the Jeff Bezos, the Oprah Winfrey's, all those people, they're doing this. I mean, you saw in the media where Tesla bought 1.5 billion in Bitcoin or something like that. I mean, they're doing these things there. I mean, you can go on the PayPal, Cash App, a bunch of different retail companies. They're legitimizing Bitcoin by allowing you to use that to buy and sell goods and things. So don't be afraid of it anymore, viewers. It's not murky anymore. It's something that people are starting to legitimize. I think even saw a report of like JP Morgan Chase is trying to look at different ways to integrate it into their banking. So it's okay to do it. Above all, just start, jump on the bandwagon, whether you want to do Bitcoin or you want to do your traditional investments. We encourage, like I said, I'm not giving you advice, but I encourage you to consider doing that, because if you're going to ever, have some sort of retirement, have some sort of level of comfortability as you progress in the future, you're going to have multiple streams of revenue, and one of those streams needs to come from investment. So, like I said, no advice, but just a little 2 cents for you.
Yeah, and that's excellent advice. And we're looking at a live price changing here of Bitcoin is sitting at $56,400. And so, like Adrian said, invest, but invest wisely. So just get started. There are a bunch of different ways you can start your investment portfolio. And like Adrian said, it could be fractional shares. I feel like you have to pay the full $56,000 today. So we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to do our quick hits, and we're going to get out of here. And so there's
before you go, I was going to say before we go, even though this is the Black Agenda podcast, we did this for Larry King, so we figured we should also do the same for Rush Limbaugh, and recognize that he did pass away at the age of 70 due to lung cancer. I think millions of people kind of, or rather, depending on what group of people you're in, you had one reaction, and I've seen a lot of different reactions on social media, people saying, bye Rush and different things like that. So we just wanted to say that we don't like anyone to have to pass away, but the bigger picture out of this is the fact of the legacy that you leave behind. So, I think that everyone should take that to heart. If you want people to have a wholesome view of your legacy and not rip it apart, maybe you should think about how you live your life. So with that being said, we'll take a quick break, and we'll be right back with our quick hits. You don't like Yeah.
Okay. All right, welcome back. So, of course, we always end the show with some quick hits, which is some news you may have heard, may not have heard about from this past week. And so we just like to give you little tidbits here before we get out of the show. And so our first story, you may have heard it. You know, Kim K and Kanye are no more. Kim Kardashian and Kanye West have officially filed for divorce. And this came from Kim Kardashian's publicist, and she confirmed that with CBS News yesterday. It's long been rumored. We were hearing about this over the last, couple months or so, but it is now official, and it is going to be the end of a 6-year marriage, which in Hollywood years is about 20 to 25. And so this was Kim's third marriage. Now, before, I think she was married to Reggie Bush and an NBA basketball player whose name I cannot remember. But she's been married to those two, and now Kanye, but that marriage is over. And so maybe Kanye's presidential race put some strain on the marriage. I would absolutely agree with that. He also made some controversial tweets aimed at his wife, which is why he spoke out about his struggles with bipolar disorder. And so sources close to TMZ did note that Kim K still trusts Kanye and does not mind joint custody of their 4 children. So at least the kids will be taken care of. And so some sad news there. Kim and Kanye West are getting a divorce.
Yeah, so if you keep up with that kind of stuff, there you go there. Some other things, I guess, to kind of bring us back to some happy moments, or maybe not, depending on what movie you're talking about. But there's a lot of Black entertainment out or coming out, so we just wanted to kind of highlight that, put some things out on your radar, because everybody is quarantined at home, and most of the stuff is available for you to be streamed right into your home without you having to worry about anything. Right now, Judas and the Black Messiah, which tells the story of Black Panther leader Fred Hampton and William O'Neill, who was recruited, was recruited by the FBI as an informant to infiltrate the Panthers. That's the story out right now. Actually, I think that's got the best reviews out of all the things that we're going to talk about. So that's why I wanted to make sure to put that at the top. I think if you go to IMDb, it's actually sitting really, really good. Conversely to One Night in Miami, which I think it's also streaming right now, but unfortunately, it is not doing really well in the review ratings. But one note of that is that it is directed by Regina King. I do really, really like her, so I wish it had better reviews for her case. But the story is really about 4 legends, Malcolm X, Muhammad Ali, Jim Brown, Sam Cooke, meeting and kind of discussing some things. So check it out, get those reviews up for Regina King. Another one that's going to be coming out is actually the United States versus Billie Holiday. That's going to be released next week on the 26th, which is about the story of how the government targeted Billie Holiday in an effort to racialize the war on drugs. So that's a really interesting story. And last but not least, the long-awaited sequel, Coming to America 2. That's going to be released to you on March 5th. Devin, I am excited about that one for sure, because I really, really did like the first one. So they better not let me down on this one.
You know how it is with sequels. They're hit or miss. Most of the time, they're not as good as the first. But
he'll probably Eddie Murphy will probably play too many roles in this one.
Yeah, I hope that doesn't happen. I got high hopes for that too. So hopefully that's good. And it's produced, I think, by Amazon Prime. That's what it's coming out on. So I'm really, I don't know, feeling some kind of way about that one. But that's some things to look forward to, as we'll all be still, mainly inside because of the pandemic. So that's some things for you to stream. And so our next quick hit is for our space nerds, for the people who keep up with what's going on with the NASA. And so we had some big news that came out this week that the NASA Perseverance rover has finally landed on the surface of Mars. And so the rover caps off a month of Mars arrivals from space agencies around the world. And so Perseverance joins HOPE, which is the first interplanetary mission from the United Arab Emirates, which successfully entered Mars orbit on February 9th. And then there's also Tianwen number 1, which is China's first Mars mission, which arrived on February 10th and will deploy a rover to the Martian surface in May. And so NASA broadcast the landing of this rover, which started about 2 o'clock Eastern, with the moment of touchdown being around 4 o'clock on the 18th. And so the rover used the landing system pioneered by its predecessor. And here's a picture, actually, in color, surprisingly, from the rover on Mars. And so you could kind of see what it got to see. And so this one was the very first one. We've had a lot of, quite a few rovers go to Mars, but this was the very first time the rover was able to record its own landing with dedicated cameras and a microphone. So they got video and audio of the rover actually landing on Mars, which is pretty incredible. And just a tidbit that I read out of the story, when it's transmitting this information from Mars to Earth, it actually only takes 11 minutes for it to get from Mars to Earth. So just a little fun fact there for the space nerds.
I like that because I sometimes fit into that space nerd category too, because I always wanted a telescope when I was young, and I always loved astronomy, so I like that story there. Speaking of when you were young, I don't know if anyone ever can recount being bullied, or maybe witnessing some bullying, or maybe even being the bully themselves. But we found an interesting story of a lady. Her name is Simone Eldon. She actually did a little bit of investigations of people in her school who actually were victims of bullying, who bullied her and different things like that. And she was actually able to interview 30 people. So I thought that was a really, really interesting story because I can just remember coming up in school and, seeing maybe I bullied a little bit or witnessed. I think probably everybody in school, you probably gravitated in all three buckets. And you just never wonder what people who were in a different bucket maybe felt. But now, Simone, she kind of was able to figure out how they've been feeling. And interestingly, most of the people that she reached out to, they really did have remorse. I mean, all of her bullies, I think even one of her former main bullies actually reached out to her and told her how sorry she was in that. I mean, for the past, 20, 30 years, that's what she's been thinking about, how she just really didn't appreciate that. And then there was another point where she said that all of the popular girls, because of their meanness, that mean girl kind of clique or whatever, they really grew up to distrust women. So I guess as adults, they just couldn't really develop healthy relationships with other females because of that whole mean girl mentality. So, viewers, if you want to do what Simone did, she says she doesn't recommend everybody doing it because it was tough. But she did say it helped her to diminish years of insecurity and shame. So really, really interesting reporting there. If you feel like you need to face your bullies, go for it.
Yeah, that's a really great story there. Really, really interesting. And so our next story here is maybe not as good as that one. Some mischievous women, not bullies, but some thieves maybe. This comes out of Florida. This is Florida women. We always make fun of Florida man and Florida woman. This is Florida women now, who actually got dressed up as senior citizens. They got dressed as grannies so they could get the coronavirus vaccine. And it may have actually worked. And so these women went with bonnets on their heads. I'm sorry we don't have pictures of this, but this story is hilarious in your mind. These women went, with bonnets on their heads, and they went with, respectful faces, and they pretended to be senior citizens so that they could get the coronavirus vaccine, and it may have actually worked at least once. Dr. Raul Pino from the Florida Department of Health in Orange County said the pair were busted when they tried to get their second shot on Wednesday at the Orange County Convention Center. He says he's not sure how or even if the two women were able to get their first doses, but when they showed up Wednesday to get the second dose, they presented a valid vaccination card. And so he added that the vaccinators noticed they looked funny and stopped them right before they could get the shots. So the Orange County Sheriff's Office was called after they were caught to process a report on the situation, and they issued trespass warnings for the two women. Deputies said their real names were on the vaccination cards, but their birth dates did not match. One woman was 34, the other one woman was 44. And just to let you know, had they actually entered their correct birth dates when registering for an appointment, they would have gotten blocked by the system, obviously, because they're not old enough. They're not senior citizens to get the COVID vaccine. So, we talk a lot about people not wanting to take the vaccine. We got people out there having to put on disguises to go get the vaccine.
I know, Devin. Hey, maybe they need to do a PR campaign with them to say this is how critically important the vaccine is. it's so important that we got people that are dressing up to get the shot. So you need to take it when you can get it. That's a great marketing campaign right there. Our last quick hit, viewers, just to kind of round this thing out. Whenever I saw this story, Devin, it was one of those ones I was like, the headline sounds awesome whenever you first read the first 2 or 3 words, but then you get to the end and you're like, oh. So viewers, just to let you know, this story is about a bird that really just holds to the whole tale of having perseverance, having some resilience. This bird was quite a bit of a trooper. This pigeon, I guess give it the actual what kind of bird, started off in Oregon and journeyed 8,000 miles across the Pacific Ocean to Australia to look for a new home. And, the authorities said it may have had some help along the way by hitching onto a freight cargo ship. But, it traveled 8,000 miles to find a new home, only to end up being put on death row, Devin. It's not looking too pretty for this pigeon. He was discovered by a resident of Melbourne named Kevin. Kevin said the bird was really, really exhausted in his backyard. And Kevin even named the bird Joe, kind of after Joe Biden, I guess to kind of show a little bit of determination and resilience, maybe. I don't know. But the authorities told Kevin that he was going to need to catch the bird because the bird could have some potential diseases. And Kevin said he can't do that. So the Department of Agriculture just come out plainly and said the bird is not permitted to remain in Australia and that they are going to get a professional bird catcher to attend to this matter and get this bird taken care of. Jeez. So, yeah, exactly. I hope that they don't end up killing it, but I think that's what's going to happen because I did see another report where this isn't the first time that they've euthanized animals that have gotten loose before. So, Pigeon Joe, we wish you well, but I don't think Australia wants you.
It does not at all. Treating him like an invading species or something. Like, goodness.
Hey, I guess if we weren't in the pandemic, maybe, but that bird flu and stuff like that, they don't play with that anymore.
Can't take any chances. I get it. I get it. Can't take any chances. So that's gonna do it. That's gonna do it for weekly roundup number 5. And before we go, we of course got to tell you everything that we have coming up. And so we do have some big things coming up, some stuff you really want to pay attention to going on with the podcast. So if you haven't already, go back and check out our conversation with Dr. Larry Robertson. He's the president of Florida A&M University, aka FAMU, and you have the option of enjoying video or audio. You can listen to it or you can watch it on YouTube. You can find our YouTube channel, just search the Black Agenda Podcast. And you'll see our conversation with him, a really good conversation. And then we have another interview coming up this Tuesday, which will feature the Smithsonian curator Mary Elliott, who wrote the special broadsheet section of the award-winning New York Times feature publication, The 1619 Project. So we're going to be talking about the 1619 Project, but also talking about the effects of slavery, and so how we're still dealing with that as a country. So you're definitely going to want to look out for that coming up on Tuesday. And that's, again, audio and video. We're trying to get into a role here to give you both audio and video, give you some options. And so, again, Tuesday, Mary Elliott, curator for the 1619 Project. Look out for that. And, of course, we'll be back here next Saturday at 7:30, weekly roundup number 6, to bring you the news. And so, Adrian, tell the people how they can give us some money.
Yeah, exactly. Because I just got charged today for some of our services. But yeah, viewers, what we do is not free. We love to do it for you, but it does cost money from Zoom to Podbean to Alitude, all these different moving pieces. So we'd love to be able to have you as a patron giving monthly. It's really, really easy. With our Patreon website, all you've got to do is when you're listening to one of our episodes, there's like a little $sign button that says donate or give or something like that. All you got to do is click on it. It'll take you to our site. Start off by giving $1 a month. That's all you got to do, $1 a month. That goes a long way because if we can get 30 people to do that, 40, 50, 60, it just kind of escalates from there. The reason why we need this, it costs us to do all of this stuff, but we really want to advance the mission of the Black Agenda Podcast, to take it beyond doing audio podcasting, even beyond doing the news. We really want to create different programming that we can have in our communities, as well as partnering with other nonprofit organizations to further advance what we're trying to do with societal progress. But again, all that takes money. The other thing that we're trying to institute is the charity of the month, where maybe we could take some of those proceeds and actually donate as a contribution from the Black Agenda podcast and our fans to our charity of the month. And for February, we did select a charity. It's called Facing History and Ourselves, where they seek to educate students of all backgrounds about the history of racism, prejudice, and anti-Semitism. So for Black History Month, we figured that that would be a really, really great charity. So be on the lookout for more details on their organization. We've made a couple posts. We put out their website, so go check it out. See how you can like, follow, and share with them and donate to their cause too.
Yes, so you see it right there on your screens there, Facing History and Ourselves. Make sure you check it out before we get off the show here. And so let's get on to tell you how you can make sure you like and follow us on social media. And let me get this back up here. Give me 1 second. Where am I at? There we go. All right, so little technical hiccups there, live TV for you. So, of course, always before we go, we'd like to tell you where you can like, share, and follow us. Remember, we are on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Black Agenda Pod. You can find us, like us, share us. Tell the people, tell your friends, family, coworkers, listen to the podcast, but also follow us on social. And be sure you share all the content. That's all we want. Just want to follow. And so, yeah, we're putting out some really good things in the next couple weeks. We got some big stuff coming next month, dealing with more HBCU. So we are not just stopping with FAMU. We're going to continue on and get as many interviews with HBCU presidents as we can. So that'll be some good stuff to look forward to. And so for that's going to do it. Adrian, any last thoughts before we go?
No, other than y'all are going to be in for a good treat, viewers.
Absolutely.
We've got some great things coming up, some really great interviews that are going to be released on our Tuesdays, as well as our HBCU Awareness Series. That's really excited about that. We wanted to kind of highlight that early, but we're going to be promoting that, for a little bit. So be on the lookout for sure.
All right. So until then, we'll catch you guys next Saturday at 7:30.